Okay.
So we're waiting for, I know Arica will not be with us today, but waiting on Megan. Did anybody hear from Megan?
I haven't.
I can text Megan.
Okay, thank you.
Kate, did you contact Kathy? Oh, here's Megan.
Hi, Megan. I
Hi,
sent her
Megan.
she called my house line, so my mom got it, but I didn't hear from her on the email. Do we have a quorum now?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Megan.
Hello. Hello? Mom, we're busy. Stop. Mom, we're busy. Stop.
Must be Kathy.
Kathy trying to call in.
Yeah. Are you there, Kathy? That's my best guess.
I know.
I don't think it's her number.
She might be using a different cell.
Sure.
Kathy, can you just confirm that it's you? I don't know if you're on mute on the phone.
Oh, I have you on. Sorry. How do I confirm this, please?
Okay, we just wanted to make sure it was you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
It's me overwhelmed with this as usual. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we have a quorum.
All right.
So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:04.
Okay.
Can you take attendance, please?
All right, looks like Kate is here, Kathy Grant, Kristen Trahan, Megan Wicks, and Chris Wilson. Also present is Adam Burrows, Amy Cefaletto, and Johnson. And absent is Scott Paul and Arica Kawara.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a quorum. If we'll just raise for the Pledge of Allegiance, if we can. See bellies. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Liberty
and justice
and justice
for all. Thank you for that. Okay. So are there any citizens' comments present?
There was none received.
Okay. Obviously, no guests on the line. On to the consent agenda. I'll need a motion to, from the board to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Kristen, all right. First, Kristen second. Favor? On favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move along to the administrative report, starting with Amy and the principal report, please.
So, hi everybody. We are wrapping up the remainder of our year. One more week next Thursday. It's pretty exciting. We have quite a few things coming up, but I think the first thing, Kate, do we want to do those 2 awards right now? Because they're
Yes.
in my report, so we'll do those. So
I would love to do that. Thank you, Amy.
so let me just so Kate, if you read them in a minute, let me just get my screen up so I can get the presentation that I have. Okay, can you see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can.
Yes.
All right, you want to start with that, Kate?
Okay, so the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education Student Leadership Award for exhibiting leadership criteria includes a willingness to take on challenges, the capability to make difficult decisions, the ability to work with others, the ability to honor a commitment, and diplomacy. Congratulations to following students, Isla Marsh and Nathan Lazurick, in receiving the CABE Awards for the 2019-2020 school year.
All right, second one.
The second one is the Connecticut Association of Schools Middle Level Scholar Leader Awards. The recipients in recognition of being a student who has distinguished himself or herself in scholarship and leadership in our school and the community. Congratulations to the following students, Justin Blanchard and Ava Delaney, in receiving the CAS Award for the 2019-2020 school year.
Okay, so back to.
For the record, we are very, very proud of our students for earning those recognitions, and we know how hard they worked, and it's a great achievement.
Yeah, and for the students, so every year come this time of the year, as far as graduation goes, 8th graders are always awarded, and they apply for what they believe awards that they should receive. So knowing these students and their qualities, we look as a group on who best fits the mold for the CABE and the middle level scholar awards. Typically we would have them join a board meeting and we would have cake. Obviously not now, but we did recognize these students actually last week in a private Google Meet, and we read each of them. You have to submit a 1 to 2 page summary of their accomplishments. So we submitted both of those, and we actually read those to the students so they knew why they were getting those. So it was very well received. They were very excited. They knew that they would be named tonight from us on the Board of Education, on the Board of Education meeting. So those are 2 awards that they will get at graduation. So speaking of graduation, as you know, will be on Monday. The weather looks cloudy, so I'm happy now. The other day it was rainy and I was having a slight panic, but it's okay. It's just gonna be cloudy. So we will proceed with our graduation on the field. I think it'll be really well done outside, just to be able to see those kids actually cross the stage. So one of the things that we did do in conjunction with setting up this outside graduation, we had them come to school. They had their pictures taken by our photo people. And we actually had them come across our stage anyways as a just in case, because, in light of this situation going on, we didn't want to not have something prepared virtually as well. So we actually have a graduation video that we've put together this entire week. Mr. Ward has put it together. We recorded the Kate's speech from the Board of Education, Adam's, my speech, and we've compiled it all. So we will release that to families as well. So they're getting their outdoor awards and graduation. They're getting their virtual ceremony. We have a couple slideshows that our media person has put together for them from when they were little, because we collect pictures of most of your kids over all of their years. We keep them in these little folders, and then come the end, we put it all together in a video. So we have that for them too. And our 7th grade class actually has their own little video as saying farewell to them. So we'll release that next week also. So just trying to make it special for each of them, you know, as time goes on, because this is not something that they're used to. They've been to, you know, our usual graduation, and I'm sure that they were looking forward to that. So hopefully we can make this one somewhat as normal as possible for them. And then as far as any other updates, so, you know, we're working through this week and through next week. Our staff has a couple of professional development things that they're working on next week as well. We are wrapping up report cards, and those will go home in the mail after school closes on the 18th. And then as far as, you know, for us, we needed to know, you know, at this point in time, we're kind of in limbo. So there's a lot of things we can do or could do, and we need to know from families and parents and preschool parents, and there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So we recently surveyed, as some of you got in your email, we recently surveyed parents on a couple of different things, just to find out, you know, their input in what we're going to do moving forward. We also surveyed our students in 5th through 8th grade, and I think they knew that I was the one that sent the survey, because sometimes when I get surveys back, I'm like, really? That's really what you thought? And this time I had gotten a lot of good information from them just on how they felt it went for them, because it's really about them and what we could do more for them. Do we need to, you know, lighten the load? Do we need to increase it more for some kids? So once we tally up those surveys, I'll share those with the staff, and we'll work on what our next steps might be. Today we received from UNCUS 6 infrared thermometers. So we had received those, so we can start preparing for the fall. We're, you know, getting supplies as needed in preparation. There's just a lot to work out with the unknown, and not knowing which way things are going to unveil itself. We could have plans from A to Z right now, and different models. So really just waiting on the guidance from the state to develop and figure out, you know, what could a plan look like for us. And I think that's really it. The YSB, I think we wrapped up one of their last programs in mid-May, so that was the last one they did. But Melinda and I have talked recently, you know, she's looking at ways like, how can the YSB be involved if we're not back in school? So we've kind of talked about that a little bit, and I'm sure she'll go back to the YSB and talk about different things that they could possibly do. So,
Yeah, okay.
Any questions, Chris?
Amy, I wanted to publicly just thank your staff. I mean, in terms of the children, the teachers that service my own children, today I had 4 of your staff members arrive at not even my home, my daycare facility in PE, and said goodbye to my child. And I think that's so meaningful, and I'm just so thankful to come from such a small town that they put relationships first. Like it makes me really proud. And I mean, in thinking about the kindergarten team and just going above and beyond, you know, I'm a working parent, and I had to adjust the schedules, and they were just so accommodating. So I want you to know that, you and Adam and Lloyd, just how truly wonderful they are. And I'm just so thankful.
Thank you. You know, everybody does it a little bit differently, and, you know, and what works for them. I think that they actually just like to ride in Mrs. Britt's Jeep. I think that's why they like to go out on together. But, you know, for them, it was, and I think staff misses each other, you know, you know, when you work with people all the time, as you all know, you're all working people, it's hard to be apart from people that you're with all the time and that you constantly talk to and be part of their lives and their families. And I think that it, you know, for us, it is that connection piece. So, you know, I really am looking for the fall. I feel that we're small enough where we can come back somewhat, because we, you know, as any school, you miss that piece of being with kids, you know, and hopefully people's comfort levels will be a little bit better come the fall and be able to embrace coming in, even under safety precautions, and changes. You know, there will be some changes before we get back to, you know, quote unquote normal.
Yeah. And I hope that it's just going to be
up to us in some way, and so that we have some direction and some discretion. I would really so versus it being a statewide mandate that we have 9 kids in the classroom when our class could have 10 in it. It's just, I just hope, that's my hope, but we obviously need to keep all the safety of the staff and the children at heart.
And I think a lot of it too, we are, I'm working with Mr. Callio, and we've gone to classrooms, we've set up desks, we've talked about the lunchroom, we've done a lot of these things already, but without knowing what exactly the hard and firm rule is, it's hard to plan for, okay, are we planning for 12 kids or are we planning for 10? Are we planning for lunch in the cafeteria? Or are we planning for lunch in the classroom? Are we, I think that it will come in due time. I'm hoping Rhode Island just recently made an announcement. So I'm hoping that, Connecticut, Governor Lamont will also soon. I will say, I do want, as on the heels of Kristen, I think that I really would like to thank, our staff. They really have tried and true, really tried to get out there, a lot of them, out of their comfort zone and be able to help and provide for students and families. At this time, it's not just about teaching, but you're listening to someone who's going through, something that you're helping and providing for in our families too. I've actually, people have asked me, well, what do you do all day? And I'm like, I actually talk to people all day long. I'm like a telemarketer now. I talk to people, and I talk to families, and I talk to sometimes people who may be my assistants in some manner, or, I've gotten a couple of phone calls from kids, finding out like what's going on with school, because everybody's worried, and it's hard for kids. So I think that, I'd like to thank the families for, you've stuck it out 10 weeks almost. We're almost there. I keep telling everybody, we're almost there. Just a few more days and you're almost there and you'll make it. So hopefully we can, just persevere and see. I keep telling, I visited some Google Meets this week, and I keep telling the kids, like, I'll see you in the fall in some capacity. I'll see you in the fall. So I hope so.
Well, please, thank you on behalf of us, and, as chair, I cannot thank you guys more, staff and administrators, and all you've done to see this through and to see us through to at least this part, what we do know and what we could achieve, which is remarkable circumstances, turnaround in 3 days to kick off distance learning.
I know.
So, thank you. Okay, is that all you have, Amy, for today?
That's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll move along to Lloyd with your student services report, please.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Amy said. My department's been very busy reaching out to individual students, and in some cases small groups, to provide instruction or support or joining grade level meetings with kids. They've been very busy reaching out to our kids with IEPs. I'm pleased. On one hand, I'm pleased. On one hand, I'm disappointed. I'm pleased that the number of not engaged students is very small. It's less than a half a dozen. And for the most part, there are some extenuating circumstances why a couple or 3 kids are not engaged, but the rest of the kids are engaged. And a couple of the teachers have even said their one-on-one lessons with the kids are bringing really great fruit in the kids working on their skills and learning and coming along and progressing. So this particular experience has had some interesting developments. As you might know, during the initial shutdown, we pretty much put a stop to IEPs, PPT meetings, and then when it became evident that this was going to extend longer, and with our becoming familiar with Google Meets, we started having virtual PPTs. One of the things we learned from them is that in some cases it was easier for parents to participate in that kind of a meeting. They didn't have to plan to leave work for a couple of hours because of travel time. So I've asked for support for the equipment necessary to turn my office into a virtual meeting center for next year. And we're exploring that. And whether I would chair from my home or a parent could participate from a break at work while the rest of the team is at the table. I think if we have that flexibility, it'll help in a variety of ways. And it may cut down on some of the transportation I have to do. I have to go up to Killingly or Putnam a few times during the year, and that might make it a little bit easier. Who knows? But so we're learning some things regarding technology from this. Another point I wanted to make is in the past, we've had a real struggle having kids with IEPs get accepted to technical high schools. And I'd like to state that that's totally reversed this year. I couldn't be more pleased with the high degree of support. Now, it did take someone kicking someone's butt somewhere along the line, but the powers that be in the technical high schools, the bureau chief for special education, the commissioner of education, I understand that our lawyer was one of the consultants to help with putting this together, but they've increased the special education staff, the assistive technology, and curriculum resources at the schools for, as they've said, for all students, so that every one of our students who was accepted to a school that had an IEP, they found that they could service the student without, there is a statute that allows them to cop out and say that they can't do it. And there's even, had the legislature stayed in session, my understanding was there was going to be a law to take that particular statute away. So I'm just very pleased. We've got some kids that are excited about wanting to go to tech schools. They can go. They have some needs, and they're going to be met. We're really pleased with that. We've completed just about all of our transition PPTs between our 8th graders and the schools of choice, and those meetings have gone pretty well. Right now, I'm doing what's called catch-up. I'm having multiple meetings a day, trying to conduct the annual reviews of the students whose annual review date was missed because of the school shutdown. And at the suggestion of the bureau chief, we tell the parents that usually an IEP, once it's developed, is good for 365 days, and then you must have an annual review before you meet that deadline. And what we're telling parents is we're going to honor the deadline we would have had if we'd had their PPT on time. So some of the IEPs will only run for 11 months or 10 months, but this will prevent us from having a backlog next spring. Things will be spread out pretty well. The last thing I'd like to mention is we had the department meets with Amy every Wednesday morning, and we discuss various issues. And one of the discussions we had a couple of weeks ago was what type of summer services were we going to provide. And we made a decision that our summer program would be virtual. So 3 of our 4 special education teachers have volunteered to be involved, and those kids whose IEPs call for summer services, it's called Extended School Year ESY services. We're providing the students with 30 minutes a day, one-on-one instruction, 4 days a week, from July 29th to September 30th. And we also have a 4th special ed teacher who may be doing some one-on-one tutoring with one child who is one of the small number of kids who hasn't been very engaged. They'll be at the picnic table in the front of the school or someplace like that for a couple of times a week, trying to engage that student and get that person ready for next school year. But so things, it's been a challenge. People are working very hard, putting in a lot of hours, but it's going well, and I'm very proud of how well our staff and Amy have stepped up to meet these challenges. Amy has done a wonderful job. I really appreciate her work, and you couldn't ask for a more supportive superintendent than Adam. You ask, talk about something that's needed, and he finds a way to help out, and it's just been really good. So it's been a very challenging, interesting time, and we're all looking forward to it closing in a week or so. Thank you.
Lori, what were the dates of the ESY again?
It's June 29th, the last Monday in June.
All right, you said July first time. I was really.
Oh, I'm sorry. June 29th to July 30th.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry if I misspoke.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I heard September or something. So, okay, got it. So it is true, summer school. Okay, well, thank you, Lloyd. That was great. I'm sure it's been challenging, but the bright spot is to hear that some of this distance in virtual engagement has been productive in ways that we might have not considered, and it might be a solution and tool we can use going forward if right fit for some of the kids and families. So that's a silver lining, of course. Okay, so we can move along. If you're all set, Lloyd, we can move to the superintendent report from Adam, please.
Yes, to begin with, of course, I really appreciate all the work that Amy and Lloyd have done, the faculty, and I also want to shout out a thanks to the Board of Education, because they've allowed for some flexibility in making decisions for the educational program. And I truly believe if the district needs something, they would try to be as supportive as helpful. So it's been a whole community effort with what we've been doing. I gave you my calendar of events for June and July. It changes so much. I just am amazed at that. The enrollment report, I'm not sure that that's in your packet, but right now we maintain 130 students, which is higher than the last few years. And right now there's 29 at Griswold High, 56 at NFA, Ellis Tech 16, Norwich Tech 12, Killingly VOAG is 7, Marine Science Magnet School is 4, Quinnebog Middle College is 1, Quinnebog Transitional Program is 1, Norwich Transitional Academy is 1, and then we have students in placements at Project Genesis, Sharp, and in a virtual learning program. And I will have the July enrollment report. We'll see what happens, but I think we're going to have to wait until September to see what's going on with our enrollment. Oh, I'm sorry, it is in your packet. Okay, the next thing is that the funds that we've returned to the town thus far this year, we've returned $69,420.25. Just to keep you updated, we did update the committee reports, and within the committee reports, you can see that we made some reassignments. And with the district committees, the health insurance committee did meet, and I was looking at times for future committees to meet, but we're virtually running out of time, and we have a scheduling conflict. So hopefully within the next time frame, we can have transportation. I like to close out the year so we have end of the year expenses, wellness, school safety, technology, indoor air quality, and a curriculum steering committee. Kristen and Kate, we talked about having that when we get back to school in September, and there'll be reports that you'll receive beforehand. So as we're entering the opening of school. But of course, with everything is up in the air until we find out what's happening with the COVID-19.
Adam, are you going to have a reentry committee over the summer?
Well, it's interesting on that because Lloyd, Amy, and I have been meeting, and Amy mentioned before, I mean, she has done some surveying and other activities. And I might as well get into that now, Kristen, because you know, in the day today, the Stonington Board of Education went through a whole series of expenditures that they would have to have, and their board, you know, spent time talking about increased cost with personal protective devices, transportation, supervision on the buses, and other things that are happening. But we still don't have a decision by the governor as to when the schools might reopen. And as you know, Rhode Island indicated that they're going to open school on August 21st. So anything that we have with a reopening would have to depend on the direction that's happening. I will tell you this for the buses. It would be, if we have to follow distancing on the buses, and we have 7 different high schools, and they're all up and down the eastern part of the state, then we would not be able to do double runs or other things. So there's some things that are happening. And I think that there's some things that are coming together within the next few weeks, like the early childhood program just issued a release with our grant. And it said, for example, if a classroom, this just came in, if a classroom can only take half as many students and children in a classroom due to the distance learning or the social distancing, payments will be at the rate that pay for a full classroom. So we're seeing information from the state that is just coming in. Now, Kristen, if we have to have a planning committee and other things, we will let you know, and we're going to have to implement that as soon as possible. One of the strengths that we have, and Amy and Lloyd talked about this, is that we're small, and it's not like we have to, you know, have huge committees to make decisions. But I will let you know on that, and we're going to have to make a decision pretty soon. So there might have to be a reopening committee.
I would urge you to like branch out, but besides other people than the people who sit on the Board of Ed. I would really be looking for other perspectives as well to sit on that committee. I think that we volunteer a lot of our time to be.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I'd be interested if Amy could put out a survey for people who would also be willing to bring that different perspective in there besides us sitting on the board.
Absolutely.
I was going to bring the same point up as Kristen, that I'd urge you to please include a teacher, para, maybe a bus driver or two in the committee, because like in our field, we're coming back to 15th, and some of the ideas we've gotten from asking the first line people who are working with individuals, we've actually thanked them and incorporated into our plan, because they work directly with the folks and they have different concerns that those of us sitting here wouldn't even contemplate.
I would agree. I think that, you know, just in talking with our school nurse today, she came up with, we were just talking in general on how we could do something with our 5th through 8th graders. And I said, I didn't even think of that. And I think it's so valid because, you know, there are lots of different things that I don't know about buses, and you know, and kids sitting, and there's lots of things, you know, that behind the scenes that, you know, we don't know and think of in a classroom. And I think it's really just valid to have, you know, to do that and have people outside of us, because we always tend to work within our, you know, within ourselves. But I think it's important. I agree.
I think
parent feedback.
Yes, I think it's important that we know the race that we have to run and the parameters by which we're working. And there's been letters written within the last few days about pleading with the governor to make a decision so that we can have the parameters that we're working at. I have one fellow superintendent who did 6 different budgets on 6 different scenarios. But I would take time to readapt the budget that we have, and if we had to, make some recommendations and form a committee to review some items, then we will do that. But of course, we would also have to inform the Board of Education and look at the structure. The other thing that's happening is last week I attended a meeting with 24 superintendents. And the week before, it was in another section of the state, and there were 23 superintendents, and every one of them is reviewing information. And Kristen, this is the #1 topic right now. What are the reorientation plans? So we've gone through a number of things. We've been very successful with what we've done. And if that's the next step, so be it. And we could be ready to move very quickly.
Do you guys anticipate that if come the fall, there'll be some level of continued distance learning? I know I've seen a ton of people saying, you know, if my kid has to wear a face mask for however many hours, there's no way I'm sending them back.
Oh, it's amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys are anticipating? I mean, I know you're waiting for final word from the governor, but, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
That we
I
would.
mean,
Go ahead, Amy.
You want me to? Okay. I think that, you know, as an educator, I want kids to come back and I want kids to be part of a building. But I think as a parent, you know, I understand the reality of not wanting my own, you know, first grader to wear a mask all day. And I think that is going to be really hard for parents. And I think that we just have to be open to, you know, in the first initial phases of it, I think we just have to be open to it's okay. And if you want to keep your child home, it's okay, because it's really about comfort and, you know, being part of school still. And I do think some people might choose to keep their child home, even if it's just for a month or a couple of months. And I do think, you know, we're going to have a plan for when we're there and a plan for who is enrolled with us, but would prefer to stay home, you know, and get their learning that way. And it might not be exact duplicate of the classroom, but it'll be the best that we can provide, you know, within the means of teaching contracts and things like that. I do think that's on a lot of parents' minds right now, and just worrying about what does that look like to a child. I think that's the hard part. And you guys, most of you have young kids like I do, and you think, you know, how are they going to feel when they see their teacher behind a mask and they're following taped lines on the floor? I think that's really hard for little kids. Older kids, it's probably a little bit easier. They've been to the store and things like that. But I do think for our young friends, it might be scary and it might be hard for them.
Yeah, I think I talked with Mrs. Dermody a little bit earlier, I believe last week, and, you know, things that you don't even think of, like, how do you tell a kindergartner they can only play with one toy all day?
Right.
Or how does the kindergarten teacher refuse a kindergartner's hug? You know,
Right.
like those kinds of things that, you know, we just don't even think of in the realm of, you know, what's going on. So,
and you know, the moment they come off that bus for the first time, or they come out of their parents' car, because, you know, a lot of parents that got back to me were like, I'm bringing my child, whether you bus them or not. And, you know, how do you, on that first day, after seeing them for even your big kids, like, they're going to want to hug you, and I'm not a hugger, but they're going to want to hug. And how do you not do that, you know, with little people? It's really hard. It's really hard. And, you know, you don't want school to be a scary place.
Right.
So, you know, there is a part of it where, is it better to not be scary and stay home distance learning, even if it's just for another month or two? Like, you know, people talk about those things, you know, and I think it's really valid.
In our preparations, what we've talked about is planning the master schedule and the curriculum and the program as if we're coming back to school. And then we have distance learning options, which we've really become experienced with. And then based on what the governor's direction is and what the limitations are, we may have to make adaptations that could be a combination of both or some other approach. But whatever it is, I think a very creative approach could develop from that. And again, I want to go back to being small, a smaller school district. We have the adaptability to make quick decisions and to make accommodations for all of our children, which Amy and Lloyd and the staff and everybody have been doing since March 16th. I also wanted to mention that with many of the reentry plans, transportation has become a real topic of discussion as far as hiring new bus drivers, purchasing new buses and doing some other things. And it takes 3 months for a bus driver to go through the certification process. So there's virtually no way that you could hire new people and have them trained based on the state guidelines for certifying a bus driver. So there'd have to be special legislation with that. And transportation is almost the number one topic that's coming through. The EastCon, the next thing is the EastCon tuitions for next year. I gave you a copy of the CABE policy highlights for fostering a positive school climate and some of the things that are happening. And we will take a look at that and to see if there's any policy adaptations that need to be made. You have the CABE liaison newsletter that Kate asked to be included within the packet. I also wanted to mention our technology consultant, Jim Ward, has worked with the faculty and staff, and we've tried to update technology as much as possible, Wi-Fi in the front of the building. We found that there's been some upgrades that we've had to take place, and we have moved some money around to make sure that we're getting access to students who need technology. And we've been quite successful in purchasing some new Chromebooks, and it's all within the context of the budget. I also wanted to mention that our food services director, Tom O'Connor, they're continuing. They're going to close out the program that they have over at Griswold at the end of this month, but and this is unique. Canterbury and Lisbon, he mentioned, we're not going to continue, but we have the option of continuing through the summer. So this is money that Tom is securing through, the USDA, reimbursable program, and the whole program is being run by federal, workers. I think Tom said they served 105,000 meals in July. That's breakfast and lunch. So that has been going on well. And if the option is available and Voluntown can continue, this is being paid for by federal funds. Now, I also wanted you to know that July is usually the Board of Ed meeting that we invite Tom in to, do a summary report of the food services program, assess our use of the USDA commodities and upcoming priorities. And he is currently reviewing the availability of some grants that come up, and he might be able to find the funds to replace the warming unit that needs to be replaced in the kitchen, rather than us, utilizing our own food services funds or Board of Education funds. Again, Amy spoke to this. Our Director of Maintenance, Brian Callio, has been working with the maintenance staff and making sure that we're continuing with cleaning the building according to state recommendations. And they've been completing repairs and maintenance on an as-needed, on an available basis. Like replacing some sinks that were very old and needed to be replaced. There were a couple of toilets that really did need to be replaced. And we're we'll be utilizing the summer cleaning crew, which starts at the end of the June and will work from Monday through Thursday, as they do every summer, to keep the building clean. The superintendent, the NFA Foundation grant of tuition relief for partner schools was approved. And that means that we will realize a savings of $27,141 that were in the budget to cover that's expenses. And this action was a positive response from a recent communication that I sent to them expressing our concern about a 3% increase in tuition for next year. Voluntown, we quickly replied to express our appreciation. These savings will restore the recently reduced funds that I took out of the budget for the 0% budget. Remember, we were at $39,063. Well, we reduced some maintenance items, we reduced some technology upgrades, and with tuitions, I had never had a budget that didn't at least have one extra tuition in there for a new student to register. So this helps us with perhaps not going back to the town for additional funds, because that was one of the things I talked to the board about when we went to zero. So this is new news since the last May board meeting. I think I'm all set, unless there's any questions that anybody has. And again, I just can't thank the faculty, staff. The students have been fantastic, and it is just really challenging times, and everybody, I think, just can't wait to get back together, because we really miss their, smiley faces and all the positive things that happen in school every day. So thank you.
Okay, so no comments or questions? Thank
Nope.
you, Adam. And thank you specifically for all your help and support and work through this. You're clearly, as Lloyd mentioned and Amy mentioned, available, on a part-time basis almost every day. So, I know I see that personally. So I really appreciate all you've done beyond during this crisis. So, okay, so we are on to old business. I believe, or committee reports. Do we need those? Or those?
I think that we've covered those.
Okay. Yeah, they reviewed in the consent too as well. Okay, great. So we'll move on to old business. Item number 1 is the budgets.
Yes, and all I indicated is right now the current 2019-20 budget was utilized to pay off the last lease purchase payment due next year in order to develop a 0% or no increase budget for next year. And this also resulted in no mill increase in order to consider the local taxpayer during this time of economic and COVID-19 challenge. And I do think that, that was just a very helpful move. We are looking at expenditures, and there are some things that come up. One of the things is the town wanted to make available a bid price on oil, and we locked into a bid price, and we actually used all the oil with the oil tank process, but the local cost of oil was almost 80 cents less per gallon than what the bid price was. And I truly want to go back to the old system of using local vendors that helps with cash flow, because when we go out to bid, we can get an unanticipated bill like we did last July. They delayed sending us a bill for $9,000, and I had to pay that out of this year's budget. And there are surprises with that process, but keeping it local means that there's a cash flow process that we can use. And quite frankly, we've been filling up the tank, so there might not be, as hopefully if it's a mild winter, we can see what happens with that. But I found that I like to be able to review the cash flow. The other thing is with the garage, we have been purchasing some diesel fuel there. Well, they had the project, we didn't have access, so we went back to purchasing our diesel from the Shell station. But in the in the end of the year thing, asking for bills and other things, the town hall sent us the bill for the use of diesel from November until just recently. And that was a $10,000 bill that we wound up paying. So we're watching that very carefully and setting up systems so that we might receive monthly, requests or quarterly requests rather than half-year requests. It just helps with budgeting processes. The 2020-21 budget, yes, any questions? And we just had a 0% increase, a 0% budget approved. But again, we have done things that have maintained absorbing costs, like the ECS grant had a total decrease of $385,000 over the last 4 years, which averaged out to be $96,000, yet our budget proposals decreased each year by an average of $3,900 and something, $53. So this is how we absorb some of the upcoming cuts and decreases in revenue that we have. And I hope that there might be some ways that we can continue with that trend with some long-term planning. I wanted to mention also that our share of the total government budget in Allentown, this next year, the town budget will be 22.91% of the total, and we will be at 77.09. And 4 years ago, we were at 80.75% of the total, and the town was at 19.25%. So if you look at our work as an educational system, we have consistently offered savings to the community in hopes that we can reflect the needs of the local taxpayer. And I could go over some of the things that have happened over the last few years, but administratively, we've basically cut one whole administrator. If a teacher retires, we try not to replace that person. And even in the budget proposal for next year, we've reorganized. We do not have a tutor for the SRBI program. We have reorganized for that. And there are other savings that are coming through. One of the things that is of interest is that our proposal for health insurance for next year is actually less than it was 5 years ago. And that is basically unheard of, because we always hear stories about how health insurance is going up. But we have people who are retiring, there's changes, and we have benefited from some strategic decisions that we've made regarding health insurance.
Adam, I know in the past you've mentioned, and this is kind of me being green on the board, that money that gets returned goes to the town as opposed to coming back to the board.
Yes.
Why is that? And is that something that we can change, or is that
No,
just?
we can't. That is a state law.
Okay.
As a Board of Education, we have an expenditure-only budget, and it's very interesting. But we've never, in my 15 years now, I've never gone back to the town for an additional allocation. That's unheard of. And the other thing that happened is when we get money in, we just plan on giving it back to the town and putting that into the general fund. And it's an interesting figure, because if you look at all of the funds that we've returned, it's just been really quite a story, because this year we're already up to returning 69,000. And that's why we could get to the 0% budget and the no mill increase this year, because when I went to the budget hearing, the town budget, the overall summary, did not have the excess cost allocations. And that was special ed reimbursements. So, they left out $30,000 that we know would be coming in. And when I first got here 15 years ago, I was asked, well, you can budget and then reduce the budget by the excess cost. And the excess cost is not guaranteed. And Megan, the state is notorious for changing the formula. Oh, we're going to give you, 70% of the cost of the reimbursement. And then they say, oop, we're running into deficits, so we're only going to give you 50%. And I don't want to be sitting here in March and having the Board of Ed having to move money around to make up for a state decision to not fund something that they told us they were going to fund. So
Yeah,
this
it's interesting to me that we tell the town that the X number of dollars are going to be spent on children's education,
that's
and
right.
then the money comes back and then gets spent not on children's education. It just seems a little sketchy. You know what I mean?
Yes, I fully agree with that. Chris, yeah.
Yeah, also the money we return to the town, if you look at it, pretty much covers the ECS cuts as well. If we could have that applied to our budget, that would be a non-issue for us, instead of what we went through last month during budget time. That would be a wash, but it disappears, I think, in the town coffers.
Well, that's why I went through the things that I did, Chris, because when we had our meeting, there was going to be a mill increase in the first proposal for the budget. And after our May 13th meeting, we cut the budget. They gave us credit for ECS and turned around and said, we don't need to do a mill increase. And Chris, I really believe in my heart of hearts, even though we have an upcoming ECS cut, there's ways that we could absorb that, and we might be able to do it again without having an increase. And that means, that helps the local property taxpayer. But I will say this, and I'm very aware of this. We could get into November and there could be a financial disaster. And then what do we do then? And that's when we would have to get together and we would have to look at every single account we have and what's available and what we can fund. And I'm in hopes that the economy can recover without having to get into that. We faced that 4 years ago when the governor decided that he was going to cut Voluntown's ECS funds by $1 million. And I think that was the 6th largest amount of money in total out of all the towns and communities in the state, even including Hartford and other things, that little Voluntown with our budget got the 6th largest amount of money being cut. And I still can't understand their formula for funding ECS. Good question.
Yeah, it's kind of sickening. It's just amazing to think about $1 million cut to Voluntown.
Yeah, I have
and
to
us
say,
as a board, we have to understand how it relates to student achievement. That's our goal. Here and
there's one other thing at play here, and I really have to compliment the board on that, because I'm allowed to try to make adjustments, and without that support, then, you know, we might not be able to watch the cash flow and what's happening. And as Amy said, and as Lloyd said, they have requests that come through, and I try to look at ways in which we can, you know, make adjustments. So the next board meeting, Megan, I will come back and we'll have a final function object report for the 19th-20 budget. And then perhaps in August, I will ask the board to approve all of the transfers that I've had to make to cover each one of those things. But the issue here is, did we stay within budget for 2019, 2020? Yes. And the only time that I went over was once. And I offered the first selectman that I would pay the $1.56 out of my own pocket if he really needed to have a balanced budget for the year. So.
Gracious of you. Okay, thank you, Adam. Is that all on budget, or is any other more comment?
I'm all set, and we're ready to go. But Amy sent me a memo today about personal protective equipment, and we are reviewing so many prices. And
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to get all of this stuff in if we need to fund and supply all of the schools in the state with personal protective equipment. And I think Megan and Kristen, the people that said, you know, people would be hesitant to bring their children into school, we would do everything we could to protect the children, but we need to know the race we're going to run and the parameters that the state is going to establish. And then once we find that out, we get together and we review information with a scenario like that. I had a friend of mine, he's a superintendent, he prepared 6 different budgets for 6 different scenarios. And I kind of don't operate that way. If we have a scenario that we have to develop, I'd like to take our budget and then talk to the board about how we address that. So.
Can I bring something to attention? I was on a webinar this morning with the all of the special ed directors in Connecticut and the bureau chief. It's my understanding from something he said that the state has asked CREC to explore purchasing PPE for the state for schools. We'd have to pay for it, but they're reaching out, trying to find vendors that can meet the needs based on some of the plans that they're putting together as to what's needed. And I guess the CREC has opened up a portal for communities to let them know what their needs might be. So at least they're, you know, the state's trying to help us get something, a source that's as economical as possible.
Generally speaking, we've already paid our membership into the CREC consortium, and we do every year, so that if we're looking at, say, for the cost of paper, we go and we check on what the price is at CREC, and if it's not as good as another area, we don't use that. But we are already part of that consortium, and I'm not surprised that they ask CREC to process that, because they do statewide bidding on a number of processes. And just on a sidebar, we do get state bid prices for certain items that allow us predetermined savings. So if we were to go out for bid, in many cases, it would be hard for those bid prices to match what we already get from a bid through a consortium. But thank you for that. I just got the memo on that today, Lloyd, and that's a good point to bring up, but we're already a part of that consortium. It's not a big fee.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider, PPE and where the state goes with that, because I'd hate to have to compete with our communities on resourcing.
It would be coordinated, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was an important topic. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 2, old business, Wheeler High School, and reading of the contract.
Yes. as you know, Wheeler
Good
sent
news,
us a contract, and in the, I think it was one of the meetings, I sent back my response, which said it's unacceptable. This is what we want. And they turned around and they rewrote it, sent it to us, and I liked it. I sent it to our legal attorney. He reviewed it, and there were very minor changes. And Peter Nero, the superintendent of schools, said, yes, we're all set with the edits that our attorney made, and we're ready to go. So here's the scenario. If we approve this, it can be now or it can be in July, but if we approve this, when we get back to school, either at a distance or at school, in the 8th grade selection process for high schools, we would add North Stonington. And they would go and they would visit all the high schools, and then students make their choice. And I love the tuition contract that we did with North Stonington, because if a student attends and then they leave, we just pay for the attendance. Or if they come in for the rest of the year, we pay their tuition for the year. That's the best contract that I've seen for high school, and that makes North Stonington very competitive. And I will tell you, we've already received some requests to 7th grade parents saying, North Stonington's a little bit smaller and it would be very appropriate for our children. And the other thing is it would fit on a route that we already have for buses. And so there's just a lot of things that are leaning to this. But the success of their school is based on student and parent choice. So that's the ultimate evaluator of what's going on.
So I know you just mentioned, and this is something I've kind of brought up the last couple of times we talked about it, is, eventually we would anticipate that there would be enough students going there that we'd essentially have to move one of the NFA buses to be a Wheeler bus.
I can't guarantee that, because enrollment shifts from time to time, and I just went through, some of the high schools.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I mean, just kind of realistically knowing how many students go to each school, it's not a stretch that we would have to essentially send a bus there. So given you're already kind of concerned about potential bus transportation with the COVID when we return, does it make sense to potentially add an additional requirement for a bus?
No, I would do it with existing buses, Megan. I would
right,
not.
but you had previously said that NFA may be dropping a route, so that would essentially give you another bus where you may need it, but now you're potentially going to allocate that to Wheeler.
The route that is being reviewed for being dropped is one way. We usually send 2 buses down to NFA. We may still have to do that in the morning, but the one that's under review is in the afternoon. The other thing is that in the past, we used to get a lot of transfers out of the tech schools, Norwich Tech or Ellis Tech, and then our high school enrollment at NFA or Griswold would increase. But based on the work that Lloyd mentioned that the state did with special ed students, I think that's offered a lot of stability with us. The Transportation Committee will meet probably sometime in July, Megan. I hope I can do it before the next board meeting, but we would be reviewing routes and numbers and other types of things. And there's some interesting things that happen. Some school districts will send 4 or 5 buses down to NFA, and then when they get back in town, they just take the students to drop them off. We bring them back to, the elementary school, and then they switch into the 4 buses. So we wind up saving some funds with routes and other things with an efficient system. But I can't sit down and tell you right now, the number of buses and other things. I have to wait until all the decisions are made for who is going to which high school, and I hope to confirm that by the July meeting.
All right. I just, like I said, if there's already this uncertainty with busing students, it just, it does add an additional load to have an additional high school on there that it adds a little bit of an additional element to the mix.
Add an additional element. Do you mean money?
No, just with all this uncertainty around being able to transport students to school already, adding an additional school, I think this goes from 7 to 8 high schools, is going to add an additional complexity when figuring out how to send kids to school on a bus
I am
when we
hoping,
potentially are.
well, this is for the year after next. So I'm in hopes that all of the concerns with transportation, life would get back to normal, and perhaps if there's any help, the COVID might be gone. So we're talking about a year from September.
Right, and like I just said, was without knowing, with the uncertainty. I'm not saying it is going to be a problem. I'm not saying it's not going to be a problem, but it does add an additional element to the mix if it is still a problem at that time.
You know,
Excuse me. What Adam hasn't mentioned yet is we already have a bus that goes down to the Marine Science Magnet High School. And that
we have a van that goes there, yes.
And that would be the transportation it would use for Wheeler High School. So would not, at this point, not add another bus to the. Is that true, Adam?
Right.
Well, I wouldn't be able to answer whether it's going to be a van or a bus or a minibus. We do have minibuses as well until a year from now, because that's when we would know the number of students that might be going there. But if fewer students go to NFA and Griswold, then that may save us transportation in another portion of the routes.
Adam, this is Kathy. I also don't think we're ever going to have as many students going to North Stonington where we need a bus.
That's right.
I mean, we're talking 5 or 6 kids if we're lucky with this. We're not talking 40 kids suddenly are going to go to North Stonington. Over a period of 10 years, it might go up to 20 or something. But I don't see it happening immediately.
Well, the other thing is, the other thing that happened is when we made the decision to go to the Marine Science Magnet School, it was like 6 years ago, and we determined that the tuition savings, we could buy a van, pay for a van driver, and transport the students, and we could still come out with not spending as much money as the full tuition. So that was a cost saver. And the tuition at North Stonington, I believe, will be a little bit less than the other high schools. So that would be a
cost saver. It will be a cost saver all around if our students decide to go there.
Sorry, I was on mute. So as a board, I know not everyone's here today, but and does anyone need to reread the contract now that it's come out, or see any of the changes or red lines? Because I know that was kind of newer information. But I am very pleased that they came back so quickly with the fair route of tuition. That's obviously been our biggest battle with Griswold and NFA, and it's just it was just so pleasant to see it come through, and really, them being so willing to partner with us in that way and feel comfortable with that type of tuition arrangement. So at this point, do we want to make a motion now, or should we wait for another month once we have more information? What do we feel comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with
it. This is Kathy. I have enough info.
Okay. So we'll take a motion that the board approves the contract with Wheeler High School and Valentine Elementary School.
Motion.
Do we have a second? Kristen is a second.
Yes, please.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Dee
Any
Dee,
opposed?
you can just put me as an abstain from voting.
Okay.
Okay, abstention from Megan. Okay, motion carries. Well, that's thank Chris.
Yeah, I think that really helps us with Griswold too. I remember what they did with our special ed. I keep coming back to this. What they did with the special ed kids, saying they may or may not have room, or if something like that happens again, we could just, I don't know how popular it would be amongst the town, just say goodbye to them if they keep playing these games with us and our kids, which is basically what they're messing with their families and students.
And their contract, which is, you know, it's insane to me compared to a huge school like NFA who's willing to work with us. It's just really disheartening. So,
Well, as you know,
I'm sure
as you
that's
know,
soccer
we have a lower enrollment at NFA this year. And what we're doing is our cost for NFA is based on what happened last year. And now next year, and there's going to be an automatic decline in the cost of sending students to NFA. The other thing is there's many positive things about Griswold High School. Their tuition contract, and Kate has gone to a meeting with me on this. I'm very upset with. I've expressed that anger. I don't think it's fair, and I think they need to change it. But there are many elements at Griswold High School that are just so positive. Look at the lunch program that we've had. They've helped us out. So the positives far outweigh the negatives. But we will continue protesting their town government, not school system contract. The town establishes the cost of the tuition, and we send the money to the town of Griswold, not to their Board of Education, because they have an expenditure-only budget.
In fairness, though, I mean, to the lunch contract, don't they get that back? That money?
I have to check on that. That's the golden question. Yeah, you asked the right question, and this is one of the questions we'll ask Tom when he comes in at the next meeting.
Can I make one more comment about what you're talking about? From my perspective, with students being placed at Griswold and NFA, one of the things I like about Griswold is their charge for a special education student is the same regardless of what program they're in. Whereas NFA, they have a fee that can go anywhere from $20,000 to $70,000, depending on the particular program. And I have a student going to the Norwich Transition Academy, finished this year, another one going next year. That's about 40. I have a student who's going to be staying at Griswold High School for their transition program, and it's in the 25,000 range. So from a special ed standpoint, with the exception of their alternative high school, which is a lot more intensive, which is more expensive, all the other programs at the high school, the fee is fixed.
But in fairness, that's offset by the fact of one of our students who, decides that they don't want to go there in October, we're charged for the whole year. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like,
yes,
it's kind of a moot point at that point. I don't know. To me, NFA is you get what you get, and this is the student, and this is the price. And like for me, a specialized program should cost more. I'm sorry, it should. There's more intensive supports, more resources that are needed, more adults that are allocated to the children. That makes more sense to me. But somebody like NFA, I apologize, Griswold, to me, they're being a little bit shady. And I appreciate the fact that other board members are starting to see that as well.
I'll write another letter.
you mentioned the town government, the Board of Ed ultimately approves the contracts, I imagine. So
The contract and the tuition is sent in to the town.
Down.
And when Kate and I went to the meeting, we had a selectman who was there, and they're very interested in meeting again, but I need to write another letter because they need to understand their unhappiness with it. And we did express, you can attend one of the meetings if you like. We did.
I was going to say, I think Kristen should attend with you.
yeah.
do. Or they can come and attend our meetings because we contribute a lot to their budget. There's a lot of students that go there. You think that they would
It
take
would have to be, our first select woman attended that meeting too. It
I
would,
will get off my soapbox now. I
it
mean,
would have, yeah, it would have to be the selectman to the selectman talking about this plus with our input.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just another vote for North Stonington in my mind. There's less layers of bureaucracy, and you working with another superintendent seem to come to an agreement that is beneficial to both without all of this nonsense going on. And it is nonsense, and it's unfair to the parents and students.
Yeah, and it was clear through this process that it was at least working with the North Stonington administration. It's through them directly and not through their whole town system. So it didn't have to go through a lot of, avenues to get to this. Yes, really, it was stream.
I'll work with Kate in drafting a letter to Griswold so that we can ask for another meeting and review this again because we don't want to give this up.
I think it's also just kind of weird that they're taking Norwich students. I mean, yet giving Voluntown trouble sending their kids there when we don't have a high school, but Norwich does it. I don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic, I guess.
Well, Norwich was that was in reaction to the NFA tuition policy. So if I had to say, which one of the three high school policies, contracts is the best, it's now by far North Stonington. It's straightforward. We pay for the days attended. There's no gimmicks or anything. And it's an interesting comparison with what's happening.
Okay.
I do not think Griswold has many political problems in it. There's a lot of infighting down there about different things. I don't know if between both the town and the school system, there's always something going on. And I don't think we're going to be able to fix any of that.
But there is one factor. We spent a lot of time with our 8th graders trying to make the best decision possible. And we, over the last 7 years, we've really increased the involvement. And I think when the 8th graders make a decision, they really make a good decision that's based on what happens. And then working with Lloyd for some of the special ed placements, we've done a really great job with that, and with Amy. But we've had some challenges with Griswold.
Yeah.
Okay, well, comments have been heard for sure. Thank you for all the input on that. So we can move along to, if we're all set there, number 3, we've got a good long list here to go. So just trying to move it ahead. The performance self-evaluation for the Board of Ed. I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to fully digest that. This is, we're going on the 3rd or 4th reading here. So I'm not, any comments or feedback, happy to hear them, or we move that ahead. I think we need a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve our self-evaluation.
Second.
Okay, second by Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, now that we've got our eval, capital improvement plan number 4.
We just delayed expenditures until 2021-22.
Okay.
And that would have been on the town's account, and they would have had to consider raising the mill rate, although I believe the town's capital improvement, they're moving money from the fund, from the undesignated fund, but we're trying to take care of our improvements, and there's a few security things and other things through our regular budget.
Adam, do we have any set thing that we're looking for the town to do as a capital improvement?
We just had a couple of technology and security issues. There's some cameras that need replacement each year, and I think we'll look at that. So I just had $21,000 in the proposal, and I think it's things that we can delay for another year. And the NFA tuition relief was another component that came in since that time. So that offers us, and I have to see where we're going to put that money, and that offers us a little bit of leeway with what's going on.
I know. I mean, we're looking at the carpets and telephones. I don't know who to look to right now, if that's Amy. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm always up for a good remodel, so if that's the case. But we've done a little bit of painting now using our existing staff, so it's been great. When you guys come in and see, we should do another tour again, so you can just come in and take a peek. It looks fantastic. But carpets, that would be great. But I think as of right now, I probably would just hold off. I think a lot of rooms probably need them. What you find when it gets humid, even when you run the air conditioners that we have, some of them, bubble up a little bit just because it's humidity that's making it rise up. And just that. So, that would be the way I would go, but I'm sure that would be quite an expenditure. We have to do little by little, I would assume.
Some reports that are being offered at the state level are saying that you have to remove like carpets and things from your buildings. So something to think about.
I know.
Yeah, any type of mandates, just keep that in mind, some grants.
Yeah.
The telephones, I forget, just re-up me on, do we need them? Is that a safety?
It's in there at some point. I think I'd have to go back and check, but that was a few years away. And the windows, we're still waiting for a final determination by Kerma. We had those repaired. They were leaking down the preschool wing, and the repair was 13,000 something. And we might be getting some money back on that, which will go into the undesignated fund.
That'd be good.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's a wrap on the capital improvements, unless anybody has more discussion. Okay. And Adam, you feel you covered the COVID-19 update?
Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so item number 6, the social worker job description.
Yes.
That is a second reading.
I believe we just wanted to add confidentiality to that.
That was in the job description.
Yeah, I saw that it was added in there. Thank you very much.
There was what?
Yeah, I saw that too.
Number 26 is confidentiality.
Yeah. I thought it looked good. All right, so we'll need a motion to approve the social worker job description.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so item number 7 is the Board of Ed mission statement. It's a second reading.
I think we have to find an option before we vote. I think you had a couple of options in there, Kate.
Right, right. I think I'd like to have kind of as many people here as we can to agree on what we think is a good idea. So I'm fine moving it till July. Once we have, hopefully we have everybody there, or specifically that we can vote on for next time.
I like number 3, especially since you added promote civic responsibility to all of them. I read them. 2 is extremely succinct. Number 3 seems to really just cover it.
Yeah, I like 3 myself once I reread it. Your own take on everything, as I'm like looking for my page somewhere.
And civics, I know I keep talking about this. It's very important. We need people to sit on boards like this and participate in general in the general running of community and country. And it's very important to our entire being.
Agreed. What was I gonna do? The way it was presented, I just wanted to put the civic responsibility in a certain section of it, so I have a little bit of an edit for it, but I just like worked at the very last item. So we can just put the and practice civic after, similar to where we did it up in option number 1. Why don't we table it for this session? We'll bring it back to July all cleaned up and pretty, and we can move forward with that. I'm good?
Sounds good. Yep.
Right.
So then we move on to the Board of Ed goals. The second meeting as well. Anybody have any comments on Board of Ed goals?
They look pretty encompassing, like we've pretty much done everything.
I'd like to see, again, something about civics added maybe to number 2, where we talk about STEM, STEAM, maybe civics and civic responsibility as well. And there's a lot of focus now on STEM and STEAM and college pipeline, but the fact is there are tradesmen who are needed, and civic responsibility is something that should be done by everyone. And I know you have state mandates on curriculum, but it really should be taught and how important it is to the students.
My question on the Board of Ed goals was, should we add something related to like fostering an environment of accountability? I know that's something that's kind of big in the world today. So I kind of want to put that up.
Well, Megan, for sure.
Accountability for what? I'm not clear, Megan, what you want us to be accountable for.
So as essentially as an employer, we should be setting an expectation of accountability for the students, for the faculty, for ourselves, accountability with everything that we do, whether it's maintaining an environment that is comfortable for students to be, not, bullying, stuff like that. There's accountability, I think, at all levels here that we should be fostering an environment for. I don't know if that helps clarify.
I think we can work there.
Sorry, what was that?
Kathy, did you have something to say?
Oh, I just said it's not clear to me where she'd want to put accountability.
Right, it was just in general. I didn't have any specific area in here that I thought it needed to go, but I just think in general in today's world, as individuals, we have to be accountable. As an employer, we have to hold students accountable, faculty accountable, administration accountable, ourselves accountable. I think there's all levels of that all throughout the board personally. So I think it just warrants maybe mentioning it in there.
Possibly number one.
Yeah, possibly on number one. Yeah, that's where I think it would work. Okay, great. Well, those are great suggestions. If anybody has any more, why don't we just, we'll shoot them over to Dee Dee as well, or myself, and we can look at a second reading for a third reading for that, with some of these ideas. I definitely think we should think more deeply. And, obviously the world's hurting right now in a lot of ways. So the way that we can really open our minds to make sure this is as fulsome as possible is a great idea. So. On to new business. So summer school staff. Do we have something on summer school?
There's a list of teachers first, special ed teachers that will be following through with IEPs in summer school. Caitlin Stockford, Emmy Lee Penman, and Sue Dander, and there needs to be a motion to approve that.
Right. Okay. So school staff are just asking for motions, and I'll list them off for various positions. If you could all just help with that. So I need a motion to approve Stockford, Emily Penman, and Sue Dander as summer school certified special ed teachers.
And Caitlin.
Motion.
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, a motion to approve Donna Pendleton Brown as the speech and language pathologist.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. All right, we're moving on to summer custodians. So we'll need motions for certain positions as well. So I'm going to make a motion to approve Marissa Laranger, Melanie Fargosa, Angela Gardella, and Gary Chenette as summer custodians.
Motion.
So moved.
Second?
Excited.
Okay, Kelly seconds. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so those are two administrative things. Now, number 3 is the evaluation of the superintendent. This is the first reading. So I believe that's going to be discussed in executive session.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the motion.
Okay.
Are we going in executive session now?
No, because there's 3 more things. I think we should come back to it. At
All
the,
right.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to move the evaluation of superintendent to executive session? I'll make a motion.
Yes,
Second.
thank you. All in
Sorry,
favor?
that's what they were asking.
I know, I believe that's where I need to go, right.
I think Megan's like, all right, let's get this rolling here.
I know what- If we're not talking about it, we're not moving something, but we're moving it to move it. Okay, so to
Okay.
not talk about it. Motion that. All right, so all in favor on moving it to executive session, this discussion.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we're gonna move on to the Sacred Heart intern for 2021. That is, we'll need a motion that the board accepts Melissa Miller as the Sacred for 2021.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now we are on to number 5, administrative goals. 1. That's a first reading. At this point, is there
If there are any
discussion?
suggestions that you might have, we'll just put it on the agenda for the July meeting as a second reading.
I think that sounds fair.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move that to a second reading. Number 6 is school calendar for 2021. Some
Do
changes.
we have to do, I'm sorry, do we have to do something about closing the school for voting?
Yes, there's a recommendation, and the calendar shows that we are closing school November 3rd. There's been a request that we use the building for the elections. And then, Amy, what did we say about November 11th? Is that a?
It is Veterans Day. At this point in time, we're not going to host something this year. That would not be something that we would be able to do by any means. Kids could, we definitely still could honor our veterans and just do it in a different way. We would not be able to host, 100 people, especially people over the age of 65 in our school building under these circumstances. So
Basically what we've done is we're not having school on November 3rd, and then November 11th is Veterans Day, so we will have school on Veterans Day. There probably won't be any program because to have Veterans Day off, we have a professional development day on the 13th, which is a regional day. Correct, Amy? So
that's the day for conference that we had talked about before. Do you all remember we talked about doing a full day? That's the day we had for that on the 13th. So if we come the 11th, but we say this, I'd be very curious if Governor Lamont will follow suit with Rhode Island and make one statewide calendar. I'd be curious if that would happen in Connecticut.
well, we can do a approval of this calendar for accommodating the elections, and if we need to come back and revisit it, we can at a future date.
Motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carries. Okay, so that's for the calendar. So we need to move ahead with the building use request motion as well?
Yes.
All right,
It's,
so
November for the primary on August 11th and the elections on November 3rd. We have to work out some of the things. We're going to have custodians and other things, but that's a community service thing that we would do.
Motion?
all right, a motion. Motion from Kathy to approve the building use requests for town hall and for primary on the 8th of the 11th of August and elections on the November 3rd.
Second.
Second by Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so lastly on the list here is the faculty and staff assignments.
That's informational purposes. We'll see how this list develops over the summer. Sometimes there's changes over the summer.
Okay. Take a look at that. Thank you for sharing. All right, so last meeting. It's being held on July 9th. So you have that in your calendars at 7 p.m.
I will not be here. I'll be out of state.
Are we anticipating that will be virtual or will that be in person?
We'll have to decide at the time, Megan.
Okay.
It's, July 9th, okay.
We might just all be wearing masks, I would assume.
Megan, we're having all the Board of Ed meetings in my town done in a cafeteria, like distance.
Oh,
The last 2 meetings have been that way, and it was really.
And it's been successful, huh? So
Yeah.
maybe we could consider that.
And we still streamed it for the public, so it was closed to the public. They'd have to make public comment prior, but they could stream and be viewing. However, we were there in person.
We could each have our own table in the cafeteria.
Our lunch tables are 12 feet apart, just so you all know. I measured them today.
We can give a test run for distancing.
I know.
I'll bring
Although I think I'm
cupcakes.
a little better than my kindergartner. I think I'm a little better than my kindergartner.
Yes.
I've been setting up little tables outside between my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old, and
Do we have?
no problem outside learning's helping.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because then you have to clean it after though, Kristen, right? Like, don't you have to then clean up the cafeteria fully? And
I mean,
there's-
I don't have to, but yes, it's clean.
I know. In our town, we'd be sitting there scrubbing it after.
Yes, you would be. You would be. We have lots of Lysol.
We could all sit out on the Constitution field. We could bring like picnic blankets or something.
Now that's country. I like it.
What about a bottle of wine?
Okay, so that's the next meeting. We'll continue the COVID updates, the administrative goals, the mission statement, the BOE goals. Guest is Tom O'Connor, I'm assuming still. And then are we going to get Nick Caruso potentially back on the calendar?
We're delayed up until the fall, see what happens.
Yeah, till all this.
Yeah.
I mean, he could do it like this, but that would be a special meeting probably. Okay. All right. So I'll need a motion to move into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Aye.
Amy Lloyd Didi, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We'll
thank you, Amy.
be in touch tomorrow.
just give me a second. I have to.
The send off for this teachers and students. You were talking last month about doing a drive-through. What's the date of that?
So that's that. I also looked at the weather for that. So luckily it's going to be like 81. That would be Wednesday. So we'll start at 11. And we'll kind of run through. I would say we'll be there probably 11 to 11:45ish. So anytime anybody wanted to drive through and come and say goodbye. So we'll be out there in our best dressed masks, the usual, but definitely come through if you want to see all the kids.
Please take them down to school.
Bring the baby. We won't get close though.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Actually,
Bye.
Monday.
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Thank you.